incredible discovery has left archaeologists stunned. It was found near the coast of Peru.
High up in the Peruvian Andes, sitting nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, sits a place that simply should not exist. This is Sacsayhuaman.
The city of Cusco, we find the megalithic site and huge ceremonial Inca complex called Sacsayhuaman.
To the naked eye, it looks like a fortress, a massive structure of zigzag walls built from limestone blocks that defy imagination. Some of these blocks weigh over 200 tons. They are fitted together with such insane precision that you cannot even slide a sheet of paper between them.
You find the most amazing of masonry style where you can't even fit a dollar bill in between the fittings of any of the blocks.
These are not just ordinary stones stacked roughly on top of each other. They are massive polygonal blocks, some with up to 12 different angles, carved to lock together with adjacent stones in a three-dimensional puzzle that would baffle a modern supercomputer. Modern stonemasons have looked at this work and admitted something shocking. They could not replicate this work today. Even with advanced computer modeling and diamond-tipped power tools, the level of complexity here is off the charts. But here is what makes Sacsayhuaman genuinely impossible to explain with the history books we currently have. The largest stones were quarried from sites more than 20 miles away. That means someone had to transport these monsters across rivers and up mountain slopes at an altitude where the air is so thin it is hard to breathe, and they had to place them with millimeter precision. According to the conventional accounts, the Inca accomplished this using bronze tools. Now keep in mind that bronze is softer than limestone. They supposedly did this without wheels, without draft animals capable of pulling these weights, and without any construction records explaining how they pulled it off. It sounds like a joke, but that is the official story. However, new geological analysis, three-dimensional laser scanning, and comparative studies published in 2025 have finally solved the mystery of who really built Sacsayhuaman. And to be honest, the answer is way more complicated than we thought, because it exposes something deeply wrong with our timeline of Andean civilization. The evidence suggests the Inca did not build the megalithic portions of Sacsayhuaman at all. Instead, they inherited massive, precisely fitted walls from an earlier, unknown culture. They attempted to continue the construction using their own techniques, creating a site with two dramatically different quality levels. This reveals a loss of knowledge rather than a development of skill. And the most disturbing discovery is this: the construction techniques used on the megalithic blocks do not match any known Andean culture. The weathering patterns suggest the stones are significantly older than the 15th century Inca attribution. Similar megalithic construction appears at multiple Peruvian sites across hundreds of miles, suggesting a sophisticated earlier civilization we have systematically failed to recognize. Let's dig into exactly what the new analysis revealed. Sacsayhuaman sits on a hill overlooking Cusco, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire. The site consists of three massive zigzag walls built in parallel tiers. Each one is approximately 1,000 feet long. There are also various towers, gates, and ceremonial areas. The construction is usually attributed to the Inca emperor Pachacuti, who ruled from 1438 to 1471. Construction allegedly continued under his successors for decades afterward. But when the Spanish chroniclers arrived in the 1500s, they were completely baffled. Pedro Sancho, the secretary to the conquistador Francisco Pizarro, wrote in 1534 that it was a construction that appeared impossible to describe. He said it was built of stones so large that no one who sees them can believe they were placed there by human hands. Even Garcilaso de la Vega, who was of Inca royal descent himself, wrote in the early 1600s that the construction was so amazing that those who have not seen it cannot imagine it, and those who have seen it cannot believe their eyes. This was not just European confusion. Even the locals were in awe of it. The largest stones at Sacsayhuaman weigh an estimated 200 tons or more. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent weight of approximately 30 full-sized elephants, or a fully loaded Boeing 757 aircraft. One particularly massive stone measures roughly 28 feet high, 16 feet wide, and 14 feet thick. These are not isolated examples either. Dozens of stones weigh 100 tons or more, and hundreds weigh 50 tons or more throughout the three main terrace walls. Modern engineers looking at these weights immediately spot the problem. Our largest mobile cranes today can lift approximately 1,000 tons, but that is under optimal conditions. You need careful positioning, stabilization, and massive counterweights. But moving a 200-ton stone without modern equipment is a nightmare. Try doing that across rough terrain and up mountain slopes at an altitude of 13,000 feet. The oxygen levels there are 40% lower than at sea level. That presents extraordinary difficulties that strain the capabilities even of modern equipment. The conventional explanation involves log rollers, ropes made from plant fibers, and massive numbers of workers pulling together in a coordinated effort. Experimental archaeology has shown that this method can move large stones on relatively flat ground if you have enough people. But Sacsayhuaman sits on a hillside with huge elevation changes. The quarries are located at various distances. Some stones came from sites over 20 miles away across difficult terrain, including river crossings. In 2025, geological analysis precisely identified multiple quarry sources through trace element analysis of the limestone composition. Different stones came from different quarries at different distances. This suggests a complex operation spanning years or decades. Some stones came from quarries less than 1 mile away on the same hillside. Others undoubtedly came from sites 15 to 20 miles distant. This required crossing valleys and rivers. Why on earth would they transport some stones such enormous distances when closer sources of similar limestone existed? One possibility is that the distant quarries provided stone with specific characteristics. Maybe they needed a specific color, grain structure, or hardness for particular purposes. Perhaps nearby quarries were exhausted by earlier phases of construction, forcing later builders to seek more distant sources, or possibly, different construction phases used different quarries. This suggests the site was built over extended periods by different groups. But the logistics of the move are only half the battle. The precision of stone fitting is where the real mystery deepens beyond just moving heavy rocks. These are not simple rectangular blocks stacked in horizontal rows like normal bricklaying. They are irregularly shaped polygonal blocks. Many have 10 or 12 angles. Each face is precisely carved to mate perfectly with adjacent stones in complex three-dimensional arrangements. The joints between stones are measured in fractions of millimeters. It is so tight that you cannot insert a knife blade. In 2025, three-dimensional laser scanning mapped the stone surfaces to sub-millimeter precision across entire wall sections. This revealed something extraordinary. The contact surfaces between stones are curved in 3 dimensions, not flat planes. Creating matching 3-dimensional curves on adjacent multi-ton stones is mind-boggling. It requires either incredible precision in measurement and carving or some technique for shaping the stones in place that we do not understand. Modern stonemasons attempting to replicate even small sections of these walls have said it would require computer modeling to calculate the matching curves. You would need laser guidance systems to achieve the precision during carving, and you would need diamond-tipped power tools to efficiently carve the hard limestone. Doing this with bronze tools is physically impossible. Bronze is comparatively soft and would tend to deform rather than cut dense limestone. Impossible geometry hidden in plain sight. The conventional answer is patient handwork. They say the builders used harder stones as hammers and grinders, pounding and sanding for hundreds or thousands of hours per stone. But achieving 3-dimensional curved surfaces that match precisely across multiple stones through pounding and grinding strains credibility. One miscalculation, one error in carving the curve, and the stone will not fit. That would require either starting over with a new stone or accepting visible gaps that compromise the structure. Yet the megalithic stones show no visible gaps. There are no obvious mistakes requiring correction. There are no stones that were carved incorrectly and abandoned as failures. This suggests either extraordinary skill and quality control with near-zero error rates or techniques beyond simple stone-on-stone banging that we have not identified. The weathering analysis from the 2025 studies revealed something unexpected that challenges the official timeline. Different parts of the site show dramatically different weathering characteristics. The massive polygonal blocks forming the lower foundations show weathering patterns suggesting significantly longer exposure to the elements than the smaller, more regular stones in upper courses. Limestone weathering rates can be calculated based on surface erosion from rainfall, biological growth like lichens, and mineral changes from temperature cycling. The megalithic stones show weathering characteristics suggesting 1,000 to 2,000 years of exposure. That is potentially much older than the 15th century Inca attribution. The upper courses show weathering consistent with 500 years, matching the Inca timeline and Spanish colonial records. This pattern suggests two distinct construction phases separated by significant time. There are older megalithic foundations built by unknown earlier builders. Then there are later Inca additions built on top of existing walls using different techniques. This is not a new hypothesis. Researchers have suggested dual construction phases for decades, but the 2025 weathering data provides hard numbers based on measurable physical processes. The quality variation across Sacsayhuaman is striking and demands an explanation beyond simple skill differences between workers. The massive lower walls feature the 100-plus ton polygonal blocks with seemingly impossible precision and three-dimensional curve matching. The middle courses show competent stonework with smaller stones, maybe 5 to 20 tons. The fitting is slightly less precise but still impressive by any standard. The upper courses, which are definitely Inca work based on construction style and dating evidence, show much rougher construction. You can see visible mortar, irregular gaps between stones, and less sophisticated fitting techniques. This is backwards from expected cultural development. Technical skills should improve with practice and accumulated knowledge. Later work should show refinement of earlier techniques as lessons are learned and methods perfected. Instead, this site shows declining quality over time. It suggests later builders attempted to continue or repair work they could not fully replicate. They maintained what existed, but were unable to match the original construction quality. And there is a clue in the history books that backs this up. The Spanish chronicles provide a crucial clue that is often dismissed, but deserves serious consideration. When Garcilaso de la Vega interviewed Inca elders in the late 1500s about who built the greatest walls, they told him a specific story. They said the most impressive stonework was done by earlier peoples before the Inca Empire. They described them as builders of the First Age, or sometimes they attributed the work to the god Viracocha and his servants. The Inca said they merely continued or completed work begun by these predecessors. The Lost Kings of the Andes. Spanish writers generally dismiss these claims as mythology. They thought the locals were crediting gods or legendary figures rather than acknowledging human achievement. But what if the Inca were accurately describing their own history? What if they inherited partially completed megalithic structures from predecessors and added their own construction on top and around them using the techniques they possessed? The 2025 comparative analysis examined other Peruvian megalithic sites. They looked at Ollantaytambo, the stone walls in Cusco, Pisac, Machu Picchu, and others. They were looking for consistent patterns that might reveal who built what. The findings are remarkably consistent across sites. The most sophisticated megalithic work appears in foundations and core structures. Later additions show progressively rougher techniques and smaller stones. At Ollantaytambo, 650-ton monoliths at the Temple of the Sun show the same impossible precision. They also show similar weathering patterns, suggesting ages that exceed conventional Inca chronology. At Cusco, the famous 12-angled stone and surrounding walls reveal the megalithic technique in the lower courses. There are clearly different Inca additions above. At Machu Picchu, the most precisely fitted stones appear in the foundations. Later, less precise work appears in the upper structures. This pattern appears too consistently across sites separated by significant distances to be a coincidence. Either the Inca developed extraordinary megalithic skills at the very beginning of their empire and then lost them within a generation or two, which makes no developmental sense, or they inherited megalithic structures from predecessors and never fully mastered the techniques. They maintained and added to what existed, but were unable to match the original quality. The tool mark analysis from 2025 examined carved surfaces microscopically. They were looking for characteristic patterns that reveal tools and techniques. The megalithic stones show unusual tool marks. There are linear grooves and patterns that do not clearly match expected stone-on-stone percussion or bronze tool working. Some surfaces appear almost polished with remarkable smoothness and no visible tool marks at all. Some researchers have proposed the Inca or their predecessors used harder materials than currently recognized. Maybe they used jade or other extremely hard stones fashioned into specialized cutting or grinding tools. Others suggest unknown techniques like stone softening using plant extracts. Local legends speak of plants that could make stone soft like clay, allowing shaping before rehardening. But no chemical evidence for such techniques has been found. Even after tests of stone surfaces for organic residues or mineral alterations, nothing consistent with chemical treatment shows up. The seismic engineering of Sacsayhuaman adds another layer of sophistication. Peru sits in an active earthquake zone along the Pacific Ring of Fire. Yet these walls have survived countless earthquakes over centuries without catastrophic collapse. The polygonal interlocking construction creates flexibility. During seismic shaking, stones can shift slightly relative to each other without falling apart. Then they settle back into position using gravity and the interlocking geometry. Modern earthquake engineering recognizes this as a sophisticated design principle. Creating it deliberately requires understanding of seismic forces, structural dynamics, and how interlocking geometries dissipate energy. Did the builders understand these principles intellectually, or did they achieve earthquake resistance through trial and error? Maybe they were aesthetic choices that happened to be sound. Or perhaps they inherited design principles whose original rationale was forgotten. The astronomical alignments provide additional clues about the builders' knowledge systems. Various walls and structures align with solstice, sunrise, and sunset positions. There are alignments with certain star rising positions on specific dates. These alignments suggest astronomical knowledge and deliberate planning that incorporates celestial observations into architecture. The Inca are known to have had sophisticated astronomical knowledge. They tracked solar and lunar cycles for agricultural and ritual calendars. They used astronomy for navigation and timekeeping. So astronomical alignments do not necessarily indicate earlier builders. But if the megalithic foundations predate the Inca, as weathering evidence suggests, it indicates earlier Andean peoples also possessed substantial astronomical knowledge. They considered celestial alignments important in monumental architecture long before the Inca arrived. The timeline is broken. The dating evidence is frustratingly limited by the nature of stone construction. Radiocarbon dating requires organic materials such as wood, charcoal, bones, or plant remains. Stone itself cannot be radiocarbon dated. Dating at Sacsayhuaman comes from associated organic materials in construction contexts. Charcoal from fires, plant remains, and mortar buried between stones consistently give 15th century dates matching the Inca period. But these dates reflect when organic activity occurred at the site, not when stones were carved or walls were built. If the Inca were modifying or building around existing megalithic structures, the radiocarbon dates would reflect Inca activity. They would miss the original construction entirely. It is like dating a medieval cathedral by radiocarbon dating wooden scaffolding used during 20th century restoration. You would get recent dates that do not reflect original construction. The 2025 studies attempted optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, dating. This was done on sediments trapped in joints between stones. They hoped to date when stones were placed by measuring when sediment was last exposed to sunlight. The preliminary results are intriguing but inconclusive. Some joints show dates significantly older than the Inca period, but OSL dating has uncertainties and complications. The results need replication and validation before being considered definitive. The construction logistics present another impossible challenge beyond mere stone moving. Moving and placing 200-ton stones requires not just brute force, but precise control during positioning. You need to maneuver the stone horizontally and vertically. You have to position it within millimeters of its final location while it is suspended or partially supported. And you have to set it down without damaging edges that create the tight joints. Any uncontrolled drop or shift would damage the stone and surrounding work. Modern construction uses hydraulic jacks with precise pressure controls. We use cranes with fine positioning adjustments, and we use engineered foundations to handle such weight safely. The conventional ancient method proposes earthen ramps that allow rolling or sliding stones into approximate positions. Then they supposedly used precise levering using wooden beams to achieve final placement. But at this scale, ramps would need to be massive. They would potentially contain more earth and rock than the walls themselves. It would require enormous labor just to build access infrastructure. Achieving millimeter precision through levering seems extraordinarily difficult. It requires sensing weight distribution across the stone. You need to make micro adjustments to lever positions, and you have to coordinate multiple workers perfectly. The 2025 engineering analysis calculated that positioning a 200-ton stone to millimeter precision using levers would require extraordinary skill. It is possible in principle, but represents a master-level capability. The underground features at the site add mystery to the visible surface structures. Beneath the visible walls are chambers, passages, and possibly additional structures largely unexplored. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted in 2025 revealed subsurface features. They suggest extensive construction below current excavation levels. There are possibly connected chambers, additional walls, or other structures. If the megalithic walls continue underground or connect to subsurface structures, it implies an even larger construction scale than what is visible above ground. Why build extensively underground at such high altitude? Excavating rock through solid limestone would be extraordinarily difficult. Underground chambers could serve storage, defensive, ritual, or other purposes, but the effort required to create them suggests they held significant importance. The broader pattern across Peru is what makes this mystery so significant for understanding Andean prehistory. Megalithic construction appears at numerous sites across hundreds of miles. From Cusco in the south to the Sacred Valley, and to other sites throughout the Andes spanning different valleys and elevations. All show similar characteristics. They all have massive, precisely fitted stones and foundations. They all have later, rougher additions. They all have weathering patterns that suggest greater age than conventional chronology. And they all use similar construction techniques using polygonal interlocking. This pattern suggests not isolated achievements by individual rulers or sites, but a widespread building tradition. Either the Inca developed these capabilities and deployed them across their empire, then lost them within decades, or an earlier Andean culture with these capabilities left structures across the region. The Inca inherited, revered, and built upon them using the techniques they possessed. The lack of a clear developmental sequence supports the inheritance hypothesis. We do not see megalithic construction getting progressively more sophisticated through time. It appears in relatively complete and refined form in the earliest phases. Then it declines in later work. This is the opposite of expected cultural development, where techniques improve through accumulated experience and innovation. The Spanish conquest provides a natural endpoint for construction. After 1532, when Spanish forces conquered the Inca Empire, construction at Sacsayhuaman ceased. The Spanish dismantled much of the smaller stonework to build colonial Cusco's churches and buildings, but they left the massive megalithic blocks because the blocks were too large to move economically. What we see today is primarily the megalithic core that was too difficult to dismantle. There are some later Inca additions that were not removed. The 2025 analysis puts together multiple independent lines of evidence pointing in the same direction. Geological sourcing shows distant quarries for some stones. Weathering studies suggest ages that exceed the conventional timeline. Variations in quality indicate multiple builders with different capabilities. Toolmark analysis shows unexplained characteristics. Engineering calculations demonstrate extreme difficulty with available Inca period technology. Comparative studies show consistent patterns across multiple sites, and Spanish chronicles record Inca oral traditions that claim inheritance of earlier work. The accumulated evidence increasingly supports a controversial conclusion that challenges conventional Peruvian prehistory. The megalithic portions were not built by the Inca. They were built by an earlier sophisticated Andean culture, whose identity remains uncertain. The Inca inherited these structures, They built upon them using their own less sophisticated techniques, and they maintained them as sacred sites. This is exactly what their oral traditions claim to Spanish chroniclers. Who were these earlier builders? We do not know with certainty, because they left no written records. They left limited archaeological traces beyond the stone structures themselves. Candidates include earlier Andean cultures like Tiwanaku, flourishing from 500 to 1000 CE near Lake Titicaca, or possibly the Wari, from 600 to 1000 CE in central Peru. Their own sites show sophisticated stonework, though not quite matching this scale. Or possibly even earlier peoples whose names are completely lost, but whose stone constructions survive as their only legacy. The conventional resistance to this interpretation centers primarily on dating evidence. Radiocarbon dates consistently show Inca period activity at these sites, but radiocarbon dating measures organic material associated with construction activity, not the stone construction itself. If this interpretation is correct, archaeological methods have been dating the wrong thing. They have been dating Inca modifications, maintenance, and additions. They have been systematically missing original construction by unknown earlier builders, possibly centuries or millennia earlier. The implications for Andean prehistory are profound and unsettling for established narratives. If megalithic construction predates the Inca significantly, it pushes sophisticated Andean civilization much earlier than conventional timelines acknowledge. It also implies knowledge loss. Later Andeans, including the Inca, could not fully replicate earlier capabilities. This suggests cultural disruption, population collapse, or other factors that broke the transmission of technical knowledge between generations. The conclusion is uncomfortable. We have systematically misattributed one of South America's greatest architectural achievements for centuries. The most impressive megalithic work probably was not Inca at all. Despite centuries of academic and popular literature crediting them, for too long, scholars have ignored or dismissed Inca oral histories. They treated those accounts as mythology, rather than accurate historical memory preserved through generations. This matters profoundly because it affects our fundamental understanding of cultural development in the Americas. If sophisticated architectural and engineering capabilities appeared earlier than recognized and were partially lost, American cultural evolution was more complex than simple linear progress narratives allow. It suggests cycles of rise and decline. Knowledge was gained and lost rather than just a steady progression toward complexity. Think about it. Sacsayhuaman's megalithic walls exist as undeniable physical evidence. 200-ton stones fitted with millimeter precision form three-dimensional puzzles that require capabilities challenging to explain. The conventional Inca attribution faces mounting challenges from multiple lines of evidence. Weathering patterns imply significantly greater age. Construction quality declines rather than improves over time. Spanish chronicles record Inca oral traditions claiming inheritance of the work from earlier peoples. Tool capabilities appear insufficient for the precision achieved, and transportation logistics strain credibility at these weights, distances, and altitudes. The evidence from 2025, including geological sourcing, sub-millimeter three-dimensional scans, weathering analysis, and tool mark forensics, points increasingly toward earlier builders. Their specific identity remains unknown. Their construction techniques we cannot replicate with certainty, and their achievements we have systematically credited to the wrong culture for 5 centuries. The mystery is not just how this place was built. It is who actually built the megalithic portions when they really built them. And why have we resisted acknowledging the evidence suggesting the Inca were telling the literal truth about inheriting structures they revered as sacred but could not fully reproduce themselves? We are looking at a history that needs to be rewritten. The stones are speaking, and for the first time in centuries, we are finally starting to listen. Is it possible that an entire civilization vanished, leaving only these heavy footprints behind? And if they could move mountains like this, what else were they capable of that we have simply forgotten? The truth is buried under those rocks, and it is waiting for us to find it. Make sure you like and subscribe to follow the journey as we dig deeper.